and give me shelter. Simple life is all we want to live. Give me food, give me clothes, give me love, and give me shelter. Yeah.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the We2r Liberians Movement platform, your distinct and dynamic platform that speaks to and for the masses. We are not in the business of manufacturing players from the hustlers, but rather we're in the business of changing and revolutionizing our process, not only in Liberia, but even around the world. Again, good evening to all of our listeners around the world. Good morning, good afternoon. Welcome to another episode of the We2r Liberians Movement Podcast. I am your host, Ayiti Williams. Tonight, we have an important discussion lineup. We are joined by our distinguished guests, we say Mr. Nathaniel, Herron, as well as Mr. Mansfield Duopu. I'll say the illustrious Mansfield Duopu, key figure in Liberia's education and social landscape. The We2 contributor, who's Mr. Nathaniel Herron, will give us his perspective, as well as Mr. Duopu. So at this particular time, I welcome Mr. Nathaniel Herron, as well as our own illustrious Mr. Duopu. Still the We2r Liberians Movement Podcast. So we'll start with our guest. Welcome to the show. Can you hear me?
Who, me?
Yes.
Can you hear me?
We'll start with you.
Oh, okay. Hi.
Yes,
thanks,
I can hear you very well.
for the kind invitation. I'm happy to be here. You and I have spoken at length about my busy schedule. I think it has been difficult, but I've always committed myself to making sure that I, came on the platform. So it's an honor to be here, and I look forward to a very, exhaustive discussion. Thank you very much for the invitation.
Thank you very much for accepting our invitation. Now we'll ask Mr. Nathaniel Herron to also introduce himself for our audience. Welcome.
Well, thank you, Mr. Ayiti Williams, at least for providing me the privilege and opportunity to participate in this all-important and vital discussion. For those of you who don't know me, and for those of you who know me by face and cannot match the face with the voice, I am Mr. Nathaniel Herron, who is always right about 99.9% of the time and never compromises in upholding what is right. Again, Mr. Williams, always playing host. I'm profoundly grateful and honored to be called amongst my peers and contemporaries to participate in this all meaningful discussion, at least affecting our homeland, Liberia. So I'm looking forward to a fruitful discussion, and I will strongly encourage Liberians and other world reachers to log on. If you don't know how to log on, you just go to YouTube and go to We2r Liberian Movement. Once you get there, you're probably going to see this podcast. You can log on, and hopefully you can be a participant in this discussion. I'm looking forward to seeing a fruitful discussion. Again, Mr. Ayiti Williams, thanks for bringing me. And Mr. Mansfield Duopu, it's a pleasure also meeting you. This is the very first time I heard about you, and I'm very much ecstatic, at least that you and I will serve as a panelists in this discussion. So I'm looking forward to a fruitful and meaningful discussion, Mr. Duopu.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
So I want to take this time on behalf of the We2 Movement to thank both of you for coming to joining on the We2 podcast. So to begin with, I just want to give a little background about Mr. Duopu, who's going to be joining us, or who's joining us tonight. Our guest, Mr. Mansfield D. Duopu, is a public intellectual, a governance and public policy practitioner. Mr. Duopu has advanced degrees in public affairs and public policy from the prestigious Herbert Humphrey School of Public Affairs at the University of Minnesota. Mr. Duopu also has a bachelor's degree in political science and Government from the University of Liberia. Mr. Duopu has more than 30 years of political activism. He was the president of the University of Liberia Students Union. Mr. Duopu has worked with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, where he worked in the Bureau of Afro-Asian Affairs and the Office of the Minister of Foreign Affairs as a policy analyst. In addition, Mr. Duopu also served, well, there's a lot to be said about Mr. Duopu here. He would tell us a little bit about himself, but he also served as the national consultant with the commission, where he was involved in developing his security sectors reforms, local government, national vision, land, through the United National Development. What an impressive resume. Still continuing, Mr. Duopu was the Assistant Director General at the National Social Security and Welfare Corporation. He was responsible for corporate policy, strategies, who is currently the principal at the Duopu Consultancy LLC, Minneapolis. Our distinguished guest, happily married for over 30 years, blessed 4 adorable children. Mr. Duopu works in the city around him for this resume is power packed. We're glad to have you. We want to jump right into our. If there's anything else you'd like to add, Mr. Duopu, I believe that this is your opportunity before we begin with the program here.
Well, I think you did a very masterful job. I think it's very exhaustive. The recognition and the introduction. I think you did a very masterful job. So, I could say other things, but that is kind of sum up my my little small resume. So I think you did a very good job. Thank you.
Thank you. So Mr. Herron, he's no stranger to the platform. He's been our major contributor who comes in and is also well-versed. Has a background in electronic engineering, also a background in engineering, and 2 masters in project management. So as we can see here, the platform is actually key to us. Not that we're trying to set up this whole active elitism, but we focus on education, cultivating young people, and also empowering them. So we are happy again to have you with you. But tonight we want to dive into a topic that is so pressing in Liberia. And this topic, we have 3 topics here. I know we talked about it on the back end. The complacency crisis in Liberia, why many Liberians seem to lack self-drive, and the ongoing struggles between the police and civil society. We'll also touch on the financial crisis faced by Mr. Nathaniel institution, which is NYHIA. NYHIA is Nathaniel Herron International Academy, a private community-focused institution that has been doing remarkably well in the country in spite of all of the challenges. So we actually now our audience to please stay tuned as we dive a little bit deep into these critical discussions. So we're going to go ahead and start right here. I'll start with Mr. Nathaniel Herron. Mr. Herron, thank you again for joining us. We want to go into our very first question. Liberia has a rich history of resilience, as we all know, but there seems to be a lack of motivation for self-development. Why do you think many Liberians are not self-driven?
A very intriguing question that demands a comprehensive answer. Again, I'm Nathaniel Herron. The lack of motivation are caused by so many factors. And among those factors, you can say stress, the lacking focus, you can say boredom, and probably you can say depression. Let's go back a little bit. Why our people are very much complacent, that they do not have that innovational spirit to do things that would excel them into another sphere or stratification of success. Why is it they are so passive when it comes to doing things or adding more value or worth to themselves? I tell you this for free. They are depressed. Let's look at the historicity of the war in Liberia. Again, I'm not trying to find any kind of a self-negating and inextricable excuse for them. Why is it they are not motivated? Why is it they are dispirited? Why they are demotivated? Why they are not innovative? I don't want to put everything on the wall, but they are depressed. And once you are depressed, that self-motivational spirit will be lacking. That self-drive will not be there. But again, I will not give them a free pass to say, well, they are depressed. Well, their lack of motivation, that's the reason why they are very much complacent. I will not say because of the stress level, which of course is possible. I will not say because they are not focused. I will not say because they are overwhelmed. I won't give all of those excuses for them and just give them an easy off ramp for them to get up with it. But society has an impact and bearing on you. In as much as we look at societal evolution to be at least some of the root causes, why is it you are complacent, you are not motivated, I will also want to hold you responsible and liable as well. Now, motivation could be classified into two different phases or categories. For example, you could say intrinsic motivation, wherein you look at that passion within yourself that will provide that satisfaction, that will give you that drive for you to go and do things for yourself. It's not there. It's not within those individuals of Liberia. Now we look at the extrinsic factor, which is the outside force, where we look at societal evolution, where we look at government's role, where we look at government providing that enabling environment for them to strive or do something better. But intrinsically, the people are not driven. Instead, they only rely on free gesture, handouts from friends and relatives. That would not cut it. They themselves need to ask themselves and examine themselves to say, why is it I'm so complacent? Why is it I do not have that self-motivational drive? Why is it I just weak? They need to be true to themselves and their own conscience. And once they ask themselves, then at least they will be able to see, or they will be able to get outside the prison of being down. Because, like for instance, I see myself suffering. I'm not doing well in society. There's no food. My kids not in school. They're behind me for rent. I mean, just the cost of living adjustment is so hard for me to meet those costs of living adjustment. What can I do to transform, to change my life around? I'll try to look for a job. If I can't find a job, at least I would try to be self-employed. If I can't be self-employed, at least I will go on a farm. I will go back to my village. I don't necessarily live in a village if I'm a city boy, but I will go there and make farm. And I will sell my produce. The money I will make from my produce, I'll be able to send my kids to school. I'll be able to pay my rent for my children that live in the city. I will be able to put shelter over my head. But instead, nothing of that nature. Nothing whatsoever of that nature. We're always blaming somebody. We're always finding scapegoat to say this person is responsible. Again, I agree. There are outside forces, especially just coming from other war. We are depressed. We're lacking motivation. the government is not incentivizing to say, you know what, if you do this, we'll be able to provide this for you. The government is not putting the enabling environment together that will help you to excel. But yet and still, you can look within your innermost self and find something positive to do. Mr. Williams, let's take for instance, I was not born and raised in this country. I was born and raised right in Liberia. I'm not from an affluent background. I'm from a very poor background. But I fought my way. I remember 1990, I was a kid. And I was walking on the streets of Buchanan, Grand Bassa County. I said, Lord, in 10 years' time, I don't want to be in Liberia. In 10 years' time, I want to see myself living a different lifestyle. And mind you, now, at the time, 1990, the sneakers that I was wearing walking on Totman Street, Grand Bassa County, Buchanan, Grand Bassa County, the sneaker had a big hole in it. I had to look for a cartoon or boxes and cut the boxes and put it in there. But I saw the future. I saw the future. The very time I had the opportunity to leave from Buchanan, Grand Bassa County to come to Monrovia, I went back to school, back to Monrovia College. And I graduated from Monrovia College. I was so lucky, and I'll give you a chance. I just trying to draw a parallel here to say, you know what? Yeah, it is true. I understand the intricacies and caprices, and caprices of the cost of living in Liberia, how difficult it is, but you still need to look within yourself and ask yourself, if this is the way I want to live my life and leave the kind of a legacy, you can still try. Let me just pause a little while because I've taken enough time, Mr. Williams.
Thank you. So thank you for everything you said to me. I think they make a lot of sense. But we'd like to take it a little bit and then ask Mr. Duopu his perspective. Can you shed some light on why you think so many Liberians struggle with this self-love, motivation, but why they don't have the self-drive?
Well, thank you very much. Just to piggyback on what Herron said, I think he really hit the nail on the head. Complacency is, I don't think it's that unique to Liberia. It's a human tendency. It's part of the human experience. In every society, there are people who are very complacent, and it takes, drive. It takes self-initiative. And the situation he explained about his experiences during the war, being a young kid and walking the streets of Buchanan and, just imagining the future. Because if you are complacent, about things, big things, small things, it forms part of the whole national mosaic, Liberia as a, polity, as a nation state. What has been our history, going back to the whole notion of were we colonized or were we not colonized, our whole notion of our Africanness, that whole confusion about who we are as a people, not understanding our history, and maybe the war kind of shows some light on who we are as Liberians, because, most of our history was, struck in a whole notion of the nation builders who came from outside, came to the country, who denied the indigenous of their rights to, the affairs of the state. All those things kind of, saturate our history as a nation state. And that whole aversion to, the people in power and how they saw other people who were on the fringes of power, how the country was divided between, the political elites and the rest of the people. Because in every society, there's a social contract, If you go back as far back to the social contract theory postulated by Locke, Rousseau, and John and Hobbes, Thomas Hobbes, and there's a symbiotic relationship between the governors and the governed. And when that link, it's almost like a mother carrying a child, that umbilical cord that feeds the child, that link between the mother and the child, that whole link, if that umbilical cord is, clogged, if something happens between that link, it either affects the mother's life or the child's life. So every society in Liberia is not unique, But Liberia case is particularly, of relevance now as we discuss in our country, Liberia. Because over the years, people have had that aversion. People have not been brought into the mainstream of the affairs of state. So that there's the lukewarm attitude to what a nationhood is. That whole national vision. What a Liberian is, what makes you a Liberian, what gives you that right as a citizen, and what responsibilities that come with that right as a citizen. Because citizenship goes with your right as a citizen and your responsibility. So the nation itself has been complacent. Look at what we've experienced now in our country. We've been complacent. We've had growth without development. If you read the literatures of African economic development, Claude Arcade and other people who postulated these things, we have serious growth in terms of GDP, but we lack that development. So how do you develop it? Even a human capital? We talk about complacent. Liberians are complacent. It's seeped in the society. Because if you have that human development index, that you have to raise the intellectual capacity of people, you have to raise that standard of living as a government, and you're not doing that over more than 150 years, that social contract that I just talked about, who's coming to the bargaining table? Who's doing a fair share? The people have always done a fair share in the social contract. But the political elites, the government of the day, have not done their part in elevating the standard of living, elevating, all the trappings of power that comes with responsibilities. So Liberians are complacent. Yeah, there are few Liberians. There are some Liberians who are complacent. I would, concede to that. But there are others who are really trying their best. Everybody will have the opportunity that we have had. It's not of their own fault. It's the social strata that has been established that have kept people outside the mainstream of economic activities. Because somebody who lacks that economic wherewithal, who has not had a job, there are over 90% of our people who have never worked in our adult life. Come to think about it. When we say they are complacent, yeah, some of them, but the majority of them is not of their own fault. They're not being afforded that opportunity to have jobs, employment, mass employment. So you have that spiral of, history of poverty, that cyclical, family poverty, and it goes to the larger society. And it makes people complacent that, look, I'm a citizen of this country. I can't find a job. I can't send my children to school. I can't have the means and factor of production. I'm not in the economic activity of the country. Anybody normally in any society will be complacent. We just draw within and just say, well, this is my destiny. But there are other people who are fighting. And Liberian people are fighting every day. And because of bad governance over our history, that fight remains, unabated. That fight needs to go on until we have a governance architecture that provides for our people, that protects our people, that give our people physical security, that give our people food security. Everything that our government needs to do for its people, because there's a social contract. The people gave you that authority to govern them. They entrust the power to you. So what is the responsibility to the people? To turn your back and and saturate yourself with personal wealth and opulence for your people in your inner cycle? It is wrong. So we can go and discuss the whole complacency. I know there are complacent people in every society, even in the United States we live, in the wealth and, opportunity. There are people who are complacent. Some is of their own fault, their own making, but others will say, well, it's not my fault. It's the societal machinations, how social strata have kept a certain, cohort of people down, where as a small kleptocratic, oligarchy have amassed wealth over a period of time. So we can look at within the contextual framework rather than just, laying it out as if every Liberian is complicit. No, I reject that, that notion.
Well, I'm glad that your response, as well as Mr. Nathaniel Herron's response, pretty much, I think you guys really dive a little bit deep into what I expected. So now I know, because you talk about the historical context of Liberia, its war and politics, instability, and all that stuff. But are you also saying that this tendency of complicity has to do with Liberia being a country that was colonized, and now the citizens themselves don't know their true identity? No, that will play a role in who they will be as far as being more responsible. That question goes out to you, Mr. Duopu.
Yeah, I mean, the history, we can't forget history. History, is the palm oil, we eat, we're making policy and all that. Because you can make public policy without reverting to history, without reverting to, laws and morals and, the traditions of a society, and our history is fraught with this whole notion of who we are as a people. In the world, like I said, really shine light on who we were. And you saw us going to other neighboring countries that we never ventured going to, prior to the war. Everything was, America focused, So we lack that reference point. We lack that reference point. Unlike other African countries who were actually colonized, we were not colonized in the true sense of the word, where maybe it was the ACS, a humanitarian organization started by the U.S. government, but it was not like a state act of colonizing us. It was like some philanthropic group that came and worked with the people on the ground and brought the free slaves and formed a government. But the very poor who land were a portion where ostracized, were not in the mainstream of the economy and the governance of the state. So that history of, aversion to public discourse, it creates complacency too. Complacency is not just mere, somebody getting up and going find work. It's good, to find work, to find even your create job on your own, use your own hands and your innovation and other things you can do. Other people are doing it. They are trying their best. I was just in Liberia and I saw the entrepreneurial spirit of the people. I saw that zest to improve their economic lives. There are other people who are struggling to, come to come up in the economic activity of the country. We find people who are, practically without jobs. They can't find food for their children. They can't find, living accommodations, sleeping rough. Yeah, those are societal issues that, a government has to deal with. You can't deal with everybody individual case per se, but the formulation of good policies that will address those societal ills are critical insofar as motivating the people, creating that sense of nationhood, that sense of being a citizen, because there's this contract, there's this social contract always referred to as that symbiotic relationship between those people who are in authority and the average Joe who needs their support, who needs something to motivate him, to take him to that state of complacency, to a state where he can be an active participant in the social, economic, and political life of the country. So our history is our reference point, and we should not forget that. And until and unless we confront that history of, being complacent, that other people do things for us, other people have come to, carry us to the promised land, it's not going to happen. It will take individual entrepreneurship. It will take a national policy that will drive that whole entrepreneurial spirit. It takes public policy to do that.
Well, That takes me to our next question, and the question I think you pretty much talked about it a little bit, because the question is the lack of resources, education, and perhaps a deeper societal issue that contributes to the complacency. I think Mr. Herron, I'd like to hear from you.
Well, we should not conveniently ignore the critical question or role the historicity of Liberia play and continue to play. Again, initially I said motivation could be classified from two different perspectives. You can look at the intrinsic and you look at the extrinsic. Now, to Mr. Duopu's point, I think he seems to be dwelling heavily on government not incentivizing or providing the enabling environment. And he also graciously conceded that they have individuals in Liberia that are self-entrepreneur and doing exceptionally well. But I will also want to look at this critical question here, talking about the historicity of the country. Why Liberians are complacent? It's a very critical question. Remember, the city of Monrovia at the time, I think during Doe time, it extended up to 150,000 people. So it means the government was not far-sighted. Right now, the population of Montserrat County alone, of Monrovia alone, you talk about around 2 to 3 million people. So it means we did not prepare for the future. The point I'm trying to make, or the point I'm trying to drive here, one of the things that making us complacent because we are very selective in doing certain kinds of jobs. That's the mindset at the founders of the country. That's the mindset they must have developed, and everybody went with that mindset. In the United States, we have dignity of labor. The garbage collector has been respected. In Liberia, when your father is a janitor in a particular school that you go to, they bully you every day. They don't have respect for the dignity of labor. If your mother sells market or pepper or whatever, one of these local produce in the market, they don't look at you with respect. They look down upon you. So it is that syndrome that have metastasized into current day reality of Liberia that we're very selective in choosing jobs. For example, again, Mr. Mansfield Duopu, I just stress very salient point, and I agree with you. But I want it to be a balanced code to say, in as much as the government is not incentivizing, we also need to look at individual accomplishment. Let's look at the various universities of Liberia, for example. They put up pretty close to 5,000 to 10,000 students every year. Every year. Ask how many of those students graduated from the agriculture department, agriculture sector. Most of them in business administration, business this. Pretty tell me, who's going to make you business manager in that country when the country does not even have business? So you graduate, you just sit home. You say you did project management. How many projects we have going on when the government hiring expatriates to come and do their work because they don't even trust you? So you have all of these graduates just sitting and doing nothing. So I don't want us to only focus on the government. I understand the prominent political elite class will always have a strive economically, and they will always do better. And the people keep electing them. But these very people that are representing us, they were the same people that elected other people. For example, I'm from Grand Bassa County. With all due respect, I hate to make this compare. Mirakawa, Zanzakawa wife. I mean, pretty tell me now. She's a legislator. What you can get from Zanzakawa wife? Almost so say one, so say all. Arguably, they will tell you, say, you know what? Book does not make sense, but our sense make book. So we elect Zanzakawa's wife that can barely speak English. And so many of them representing them, representing us over there. What do you expect? What happened with the 5,000 to 10,000 graduates that Herron University put out every year? Why can't they be incorporated? That's the point I just wanted to stress. Go ahead, Mr. Mensi. If you Duopu, if you want to respond, that's fine. Mr. Ayiti, you can come in. But I just want to stress that point to say we should not only look at government heavily. Let's split it.
True.
Let's split it.
I agree, and that's why the We2r movement strongly believe that
They put him on the janitor. They put him to nothing. They won't sit in the office.
Has to do with the quality of productions that the country has produced. And we can go back to tradition to say maybe domestically our people have not been we've not been taught to be self-sufficient besides looking to government for our salvation. But because the real truth is, like Mr. Duopu alluded to, I think this is a cultural thing, this is a tradition where, because of the foundation of how the country was founded, these were people who were enslaved, and people who all the look was pretty much hand out. So it's the same culture that we've adopted. So I think until we can step out of that, I think behind the scenes, we talk about Mr. Herron, where we often put ourselves in a box, boxes of the things I would say. So in order for us to make strides, and we have to take risks, and just looking at this from the social side, where you can't wait. You have to step outside in time. Go and, like you just said, if you have to be a garbage cleaner, you clean garbage. Some people have to get into agriculture. Some people have to carpentry, the plumbing, all the stuff that we can get into. But I think we've been trained to, for the most part, a lot of Liberians, not all of us, where we sit there and we wait for other people. We look to other people. Even for those who are in leadership, the country, we find a country that is great. The country itself is complacent because she's not able to use her human capacity to take and use her resources that she has in order to be able to emancipate herself from the state that she's in. But that would take me to our next question. If Mr. Duopu does not have anything to say in response to what you say. So now, how can the young children, Liberian children, kind of youth, break free from this culture of complacency? I know you highlighted some points, Mr. Herron, and develop a sense of self-motivation and independence. That's for you, Mr. Duopu.
Yeah, just to go back to the whole point of government. Just recently, when you said announced the temporary halt in support for a Liberian government, I think it was what, $50 to $60 million, of usage support. What did our government do? Everybody went to everybody kind of freaked out. They were panicking here and there. They were scrambling. People were calling for legislative hearing to discuss the impact of usage, suspension of aid, and all that stuff. My thought process was, why should we panic? We're a nation state. We're a sovereign state. So that whole notion of complacency kind of sits even in our national government, looking forward to other people doing for us what we can do for ourselves. But if you go to the national legislature, you find people living in opulence, riding vehicles that could feed thousands of people, living in homes, living in, in glamour, glitz and glamour. Whereas the people who send them there are living in squalor. You don't have electricity. Where a representative got a generator beating, that could even supply the neighborhood. Tim McCann, one of the great political theoreticians, political scientists, once said, a man voted for is a man lost. Everything you vote for somebody, everything you get somebody power, you've lost that person. Because when you don't have that political socialization to rein that person in, that's different between maybe the American democracy in our democracy, we don't have the political socialization that can rein in our elected officials. So they run amok, they do things, and the very society kind of, deify them, they edify them, they give them props because of our political socialization, of complacency. You depending on your lawmaker to either give you something for your wife that's pregnant, for your child that's out of school, for little thing, to help you for the day. So he brings a bag around, he scatter it around, you elect him, and McCarthy will say, you've lost him. So the whole notion of complacency, I'm not trying to obfuscate people's personal responsibility to themselves in terms of their personal, self-sabotaging behavior, in terms of not looking for work or being lazy. Like I said, there are people in society who are complacent. Yes, in every society for that matter. In every society, there are people who know that we live here and we see people we hear, we see, interact with people who, for better word, they just are freeloaders in every society. But our history have taught us a deep sense of complacency since the founding of the nation state. Somebody coming from somewhere will do it for us. Even our agricultural economy. We talk about agriculture, but not going back to agriculture. We are a nation that was feeding ourselves for a long period of time before the introduction of the PL 480. I wrote a paper when I was in graduate school about the decimation of the Liberian agro-economy and the colonization of our taste bud. The colonization of our taste bud. That if you eat that pusawa, you have not eaten. If you eat any other thing, but you eat that pusawa, because they colonized us, they used that PL 480, that rice, that it was this surplus rice and they wanted to throw it somewhere, sign an agreement with our political establishment. It wasn't the people. It was the political elites who saw it as a way of either making a quick buck or keeping our people, to lack that entrepreneurial spirit to grow their own food and to depend on a regular shipment of that PL 480, whereas we're giving up our hard-earned foreign exchange. So our whole our mentality to food is just couched in that rice, pusawa rice. Even if you get other form of rice, even our indigenous rice, people kind of look down on it because we don't have that sense of nationhood. So complacency can be, contextualized. I'm not making excuses for anybody who just wants to sit down, fold their hands, and not do anything for them. There are a lot of people who are trying, but it's stratification, the barriers to penetrate. Not many people can penetrate in it. There's no middle class in our country. You're either in an elite class or you're a peasant. You're either a petit bourgeois radical or you're one of those who are the lumpen bourgeoisies. The lumpens are very dangerous in a political system because lumpen whole mindset is the
middleman.
Is the amassment of wealth. So lumpen extract from the bourgeois class and the proletariat class, as Marx, Karl Marx postulated in the Descapita. So that whole notion of complacency, and Brother Herron, I know you kind of focusing on it and the people's responsibility, but also it's a symbiotic relationship. There's a social contract that we should not lose focus of as we postulate these things. Because for me, my training as a political scientist, I'm making these kind of juxtapositions. I always try to find linkages. What political scientists do, unlike other people who don't understand anything from a theoretical construct standpoint. So it gives you that appreciation to look at it, to look at the situation and assess it and be, open-minded in being, polemical, and not just being unifocal, but just being, do a cultural review of it and look at it from a construct standpoint. So our history has always been a complacent history since the founding of the nation state. Our flag was imported. Our pledge of allegiance was imported. Those are complacent attitudes. You're not entrepreneur, even in the building of the nation state. That someone Greenleaf will come from Harvard University and write a constitution who has no reference point to your history as a people, as an African people. Somebody will come and superimpose themselves on you, and you say yes, and they will lord over you, and they will use it to send money, but 80% of that money will come back because you have armchair intellectuals or experts who will follow that money and bring that money back to high wages. So the very project that is supposed to be, implementing, it goes halfway, and our corrupt officials siphon some of that money, So, you said stop that money. So we start going to panic mode, whereas we can generate that money from a corrupt legislature that has assumed to itself, this stream of ill-gotten wealth that we can rein that in. So it depends on it also has to do with the political socialization of the people, So, we can discuss it, in a multifaceted way, but we can't be too unifocal in discussing this thing because these things get broader, historical context that we have to draw from that history. Then we use that history to say, how do we map our way out? And you ask the question, how do we get out of the quagmire? It's a quagmire. It's based on our history. Until and unless we change that mindset that people can do anything to make a living, like what Herron talked about, being a janitor, the dignity of labor. Have we kind of taught that in our society that you can be a janitor and be, and live and get a livable wage, and you can send your children to school on that janitorial job you do, and you can be a functioning member of society. People will not laugh at your kids. People will not, bully your kids because of the kind of work you do. A lot of janitors are here. Some of us came to the country with their, all jobs, to make sure our family had bread on the table. It didn't take away our dignity. It just gives you character. Have we start teaching character in our school that you can do something and you can maintain your character, you can do something that will bring dignity to your family? No. What we teach now is everybody can be a politician. Everybody can run for political office. You win, you get money, you look down at other people who put you there, then let God comes and brings you down. That crab mentality. So the whole notion of public service now is just driven by the amassment of wealth. So that creates a sip in the society. If the guy who voted for you, who put you there, and the wealth gap has increased, over that person's tenure in office, the guy said, what the use? This guy is up there and I'm suffering here. That sense of complacency kind of sip in. Even if you won't try, there's no outlet for you except you kind of, bow to this guy, or he takes you and he gives you a little thing and he said, I get your loyalty, you get my loyalty, right? And that kind of relationship is, but who benefits? Society doesn't benefit. It's just a small pocket of people here and there who will just come through, and because of their affiliation with these people. So it's not a collective national agenda that brings everybody into the political, in the economic life of the country. You either get in a connection somewhere, you're a Herron, my man, a guy from Buchanan, and somebody, one of the big guys from Buchanan, my man, the guy Herron, my man, our man. But you forget the Williams guy and the John J, who doesn't have that Herron name, So these political socialization mean recognition, status, social status, and all those kind of the trappings of power have created this big gap. So underneath that social strata, they have no opportunity. So that lack of opportunity creates that sense of complacency.
Yeah.
Like I said initially, some of them is not of their own fault. Some of those things are driven by how our society is stratified.
So we want to thank you both for those responses. Very insightful, enlightening. Hopefully, for our viewers, if you're tuning in, this is the We2r Liberians Movement platform. This is exactly what it's all about. No one is more Liberian than the other. We are all, equal status when it comes to citizenship. So, and this is what it's all about. Talking about you being a sweeper, you being a janitor, you being a plumber, carpenter. Because back in the days, I think people have respect for dignity of labor back in the day. People who work at the free port were able to send their children to cathedral. There were people who even start marketplaces. But how is it now that we're in 2025 and we find ourselves in a situation where we're even becoming more complicit? You know what I mean? Because like you said, why would you be even complacent to have a job where you're being paid $15,000 and then one guy is being paid $100, especially a police officer? So complacency, the tendency that we have to sit to not break free so that everybody can enjoy the national kick. But anyway, I would like to quickly transition to our next question because we can go on and on. I mean, the question or the information that will be disseminated out here, we'll continue to just keep moving. So let's look at our next question here. Now, Mr. Herron, before we transition to our next segment in police versus civil society, in your opinion, how can community leaders, including politicians and influential figures, how can they help shift this mindset to encourage personal responsibility? What would you say?
Very simple. In one sentence. The sentence is, it starts with me. Once you say, in order to change or break that quagmire or whatever problem that we are faced with, we are the solution. Once you say it starts with me, like what we're doing on the show here, it says that we are revolutionizing the thoughts of our people. So it starts with us. Once we start telling people to say you have to break that chain, you have to break that shackle of dependency and complacency. Once you start to tell them and it manifests within themselves and they know how important they are, how they can contribute to society, we will be able to do better. Yes, we must have a national agenda. I will not be oblivious to the fact, but we got to be very, very much careful. We cannot continue to be a victim of our own trap and concession at our own peril. We have to be very much realistic to say it starts with us. Because the very people that we are talking about being complacent, those will be the same people that the Liberian people are going to elect. For example, someone like Joseph, a plain seller. Of course, at the point in time, he considered himself to be a downtrodden, a Thomas Fowler, and the rest of them. They are the ones in the echelons of power today. So once we can say, you know what, the process starts with me, to change that mind, change that mindset, or change that attitude, it starts with me, like what we're doing right now, educating the people. Says that you got to break from that chain of dependency and complacency. Once you continue to tell them, because if you look at the historicity of the country, the way how the country was formed, like I told you guys, I think during Dota, Monrovia, the population of Monrovia was probably 100 to 150,000. It was not built for over 3 million people. Everybody living from in the interior right now, coming to Monrovia. Like the way Mr. Duopu rightfully said, back in those days, prior to pre-colonial period, our people used to feed themselves. We have our own country rice that was very, very much nutritional. It was coming from all in the interior. Not anymore, Mr. Williams. People barely make farms anymore. So in order for us to break away from that mindset, it starts with us. It starts with me. Like what we're doing right now. Let educated people start relying on handout. Start relying on subsidy. Start thinking. We're not doing anything like that. Nothing whatsoever. I'd like to pause to give other people a chance to come in.
All right. You know, because we're running out of time, let's pivot quickly and then go to our next segment, police versus society. So, Mr. Duopu, I'm going to start with you. Now let's move on to the tension between the police and the civil society in Nigeria. There have been numerous reports of police brutality, mistreatment of citizens, and overall distrust between the two groups. What do you think is at the heart of this issue, Mr. Duopu?
Well, it's a very difficult situation, and there can never be a functioning democracy without the rule of law.
Yeah.
The rule of law is at the heart of any democratic governance. Without that, it's like the law of the jungle, the days of, the strong might makes right. We've evolved as a human species from that kind of human interaction. So laws were made to govern society, and people were expected to follow the laws because laws are there because in the absence of law, anybody won't do anything. Human nature is not bound by any restraint, but laws are created to restrain us because there are consequences when those laws are broken. It's part of human nature not to obey law, but the consequences.
Yeah.
Without laws, society will be in a state of chaos.
True.
There won't be no economic activity. There won't be no political activity. There won't be no social activity without laws. Our lives are based on laws. Even the law of self-preservation. There are laws that govern the individual self. There are some things that you just can't do. They'll be harmful to yourself. There are self-laws and there are societal laws. So in a society where you see the tension between law enforcement and the people, there's a history behind it. Are we a restless public? Are we a society that doesn't believe in the rule of law? Are our leaders good examples of following the rule of law? So all these things that happen on the micro level, the MA, also happen on the micro level, the MI. They got macroaggression and they got microaggression. They get the flagrant violation of law from a larger societal like I was just reading something about a lawmaker who was trying to bypass the police and he was given a ticket, but then I think the police was summoned at the Capitol building. Somebody saying they're holding contempt or something. Can you imagine that kind of society where there's no rule of law? Even the people who make the law are themselves the first violators of those laws. Haven't we seen, even on the Capitol, on the premises of the Capitol building, flagrant violation of law? You see the political quagmire that is existing right now, the serious, governance crisis that we're facing. So these are things that the public looks at. The commoners, people who, the average Joe and the average Mary, they hear these things, they see their leaders violating laws. So they say, well, what incentives will I, get in not violating the law? There are no consequences. So the police themselves are victims of enforcing the law. The police will go enforce the law, the public will won't beat them up, chase them, They lack the lethal. In America, other Western democracies, the society is based on the rule of law. And who is the custodian of that law? Law enforcement, the police. At the first level of law enforcement, the police. If you don't have that, you don't have a society. Because the police role is to protect society from itself. So there are people in society that want to harm the very society, almost like self-harm. You have this hallucination, you self-harm, you cut yourself. People get the mental illness, where they slash their own body. It's a mental state of self-harm. And even societies, every society got a tendency to self-harm. And the police is there to stop that or to mitigate that self-harm. So when you find in our society, the conflict in society, and the police is just, an instrument of the state. The police is an instrument of the state. You take that off, the state gives you that power, to enforce the rule of law. And when the very people who making the laws are flagrantly violating the very law, how the enforcing mechanism works. And the very people who, are part of society, they're not going to obey laws. I just saw the city mayor and the minister of public works going the street of Monrovia. We never had that before. People selling all over the street. I mean, it's not bad to sell, but there should be restriction. In a society that has no restriction on, how people engage in trade and all that stuff, it's a lawless society. You won't experience any kind of real, growth. Even the markets are being abandoned by the people. Modern markets. Why? Because if you're selling bitter ball in the market and your friend selling bitter ball on Broad Street, or the people on Broad Street, who do you think bitter ball will finish for? They got on Broad Street, right?
Of course.
Yeah, but if everybody who's selling bitter ball to a particular place, the public policy already law is a reflection of public policy. There's a symbiotic relationship between law and public policy. The two go together. They find solidarity in each other. So if you have everybody saying bitter ball in a particular area, who won't buy bitter ball, you go down there. There will be no, conflict in society. So the police job will be less, and they won't have that tension in society. But the problem I see is, how there are some bad apples in the police. I believe that. Like any police force, there are bad apples, there are bad cops, road cops. But by and large, I've just came from Monrovia and saw police activity and stuff like that. In fact, they don't even have the logistics. They don't even have the enforcing mechanism. You got to have that lethality. Let the public know that you have a lethal way of enforcing the law. If anybody violates the law and creates any, hostile, interaction, that person can be taken down. That's got to be there. That mutually assured destruction got to be there. But you go baton and the other people got knives and they chasing you with cutlasses. What a lethality you got. You got nothing. So they don't have anything. They are underpaid. They are stretched. There are some places there are no police force. You can't even find a telephone to call. There's no electricity. So it's a societal conundrum, and the police crisis and all that stuff with civil society is just a small component of what we're dealing with as a nation. Until we can holistically deal with our issues, especially in terms of law enforcement, the rule of law, because everything we will do in terms of our national growth and development has to start with the rule of law. Anything else is just a waste of time. It's a big waste of time. Once we don't have law and order, nothing we do will be sustained, because our governance architecture itself has to be based on the rule of law. The enforcement mechanism got to be there. When the Supreme Court gives a verdict It has to be, there's some kind of enforcement mechanism got to be there. Or else people will flaunt the rule of law. The courts don't mean anything. But if you go to court, the highest bidder, you know, I mean, our judiciary is a mockery. You know, is where people go and sell justice. And you know, Socrates once said, justice is the foundation of any society. Justice. Justice, that word justice, it can be so kind of, you know, elusive sometimes. Without justice, society will never function. You know, you can get peace, you can get democracy. Justice is at the epicenter of any society. And we're lacking that so much in our country because you can't even have the resolution of conflict in society now. You know, people taking the law into their own hand. There's no enforcement mechanism. So we got to work on that. You know, we got to work on that as a country. And the sooner we get that straight, you know, there's no society that will have conflict. The conflict is part of society because there are competing interests in society. And those interests, sometimes they collide, you know, and when they collide, I mean, you know, there has to be some mitigation. And, you know, laws are mitigating factors in society. It's harmonizing conflict. You know, the consequences for those who break those laws, those rules, even our economic activities, you know, I mean, people flaunting the fact that we don't even have laws that protect consumers. So somebody can bring in, you know, contaminated milk, you know, send people to the hospital without any consequences. Because the very people who should be protecting the people are in the pockets of the people who bring in those bad products to the market. So at the end of the day, you know, it's about the amassment of wealth, you know, and that gap continues to widen. And complacency seeps in. People feel an aversion to the political establishment. And that's what the political establishment wants. They want to keep people complacent. It's in their self-interest. Yeah, you know, it's in their self-interest to perpetuate their power, their role, their hold on power and wealth. And, you know, and keep the public restless. Because complacency will always drive restlessness. People protesting every day. Around our way to people, young guys, you know, who should be in a job market, in a labor economy. They're going to protest for things that they don't have no idea of. It's complacency that is spewing this social tension. You know, if people were working, they were doing activities. Who went sit down and run behind somebody who wants you to go chung rock or destroy somebody's property, you know, create social chaos? No, you don't do that. You don't have no motivation to do that. Because you are less motivated, you are complacent, you are easily swayed. You know, so there's context on discussing this social malaise. You know, these things cannot be just described. It has to be contextualized. You know, and what policy analysts do, and what social scientists do. You know, they contextualize these things and find linkages. When you find those linkages, then you kind of drive them home, and you have this whole thoroughfare, you know, almost like cars coming from the exit and other roads and coming on the thoroughfare, you know. How these social problems, they are just channeled in a thoroughfare. And it takes policy actions. Because in every policy you develop, there will always be, you know, negative externalities. But you have to find ways to mitigate those negative externalities. And what a government is there for. And that brings us back to the social contract. You know, in the We2r movement, you know, I mean, is a platform that educates. You know, it's a platform that is provocative, that will stimulate the intellectual capacity of those who will listen, who will follow the platform. You know, because like you and I have talked, you know, this platform should be, you know, that
the school of excellence.
a school of excellence, yeah, and you know, and that shows that intellectual bastion. Because if you have the kind of thought-provoking discussions, you know, it helps society to be conscientized. A lot of people, they don't even know themselves. You know, that's what Socrates always said: "Know thyself." Who are you? What makes you a Liberian? What justifies you as a Liberian?
Wow.
And these are questions that are thought-provoking. What do you mean I'm Liberian? What do you mean? You know, will go to your conscience. What is your responsibility? What are your duties as a Liberian? What are the rights and privileges that appertain as a Liberian? You know? So these are things that society is being grappling with, you know, and law enforcement is just a small component. There are a lot of other issues that we could discuss, you know, the entire night, but because of time, you know, we can't. But a lot of issues that the We2r movement can bring to the fore, you know, and it can start a mass movement of conscious, you know, bodies that will hold people accountable, people who need to be held accountable without fear of losing something, because you've already lost something if you don't hold it accountable. So what's the fear?
Wow.
You know?
Tonight was one of the most powerful nights, you know, with all of the information, the teaching, I mean, just pointing us in directions where not only are we getting information here and just to have a discussion, but I mean, just the teaching. Hopefully, you know, the Mansfield D is down there, the young boys, because We2r movement is for downtraders, for everybody, you know.
Yeah.
Whether you're up there, you're down there, everybody should be able to come. And this is a place where we can come, we can have these dialogues, and you know, I mean, hopefully mitigate the problems that we have, solve the problem we have, and to make our country a better place. So, I mean, I think your response was so detailed, was in depth, and we know we're running out of time. But I also want to move to our next person, and we'll ask Mr. Nathaniel here. Just one question real quick. Maybe we'll have two more questions, and we'll transition right to our next segment so we can close here. So how do you, Mr. Herron, how do you think both the government and civil society can work together to restore trust and ensure that the police force respects the right of citizens? And the reason why I'm asking this question, because there was an incident actually that even provoked this particular topic, where I actually saw a police officer. I don't know where it was, but I tried to watch the tape. I mean, several times to get the details, but for some reason I just don't get it. What? I mean, yes, a police officer. There were several police officers who grabbed this young man. I think were trying to force him on a bike, kick him in the face, and he was not that he was being oppositional, or he was you know, trying to attack the police officer. But the police officer, just like we told, had there was no weapon. There was nothing that he had to say when I was subdued, and the man was not even being, you know, aggressive. But he's kicking him in the mouth, and you have another police officer standing. You got people standing by. You know, so how do you think both the government and the police, because there's this rift, you know, how can you know, society work together now to restore this trust and ensure that the police respect the rights of the citizens? Because there's no respect here. Citizens don't respect the police. Police does not respect the citizens. What can we do to bridge the gap?
And we will continue on that contour of the police not respecting civic society and civic society or civil society not respecting the police. The problem with policing in the community is a serious problem. Liberia is faced with a conundrum that if we are not mindful, it will degenerate into something totally different, wherein the police will be seen as a faction and civil society will be seen as another faction. But let us look at the historicity of policing or law enforcement. It all started from law enforcement. Back in those days, if you even read the history of law enforcement, they have slave patrol. We'll go as far as back as during the 1700s, when you have millions of black people were on plantations and working. There was not in the law enforcement. But the various colonies, at the time they were called colonies, they were not states. The various colonies decided to recruit young white men, and it was mandatory that at least they should serve in law enforcement. At that time, they called them constable, or sometimes they called them county sheriff, to make sure that black people do not get out of hand. They should not escape from the plantation. They were bound to gather or assemble, or you can't escape, and they were just to work. And so these constables or county sheriff or slave patrol, part of the job responsibility was to chase those slaves whenever they escape, and once they are captured, they reprimand them. And sometimes these slave patrols were paid. I'm only trying to give the historicity of law enforcement and how it flew, or at least it was able to transition back to places like Liberia. And so it metastasized into modern policing today, starting from Massachusetts or Boston, Massachusetts, and the rest of it. So if you look at the historicity of policing, it does not have a positive background. It has a background, or it comes from a perspective of suppression. I hate to use such a word like that on policing, but it has changed over the years. Police history stems as far back as doing slave trade. So they went to Liberia. Now, Liberia's situation is really, really worse. Because like the way Mr. Duopu said, we have to look at it holistically. We can't just only look at one segment of it and say, this is the solution. You can't. Because the very lawmakers are lawless. Lawless people who don't respect the law. Can you imagine one country, two speakers at the same time? Then the executive, you swapping power to another independent branch of government. How lawless the country is. Simply because they want certain budget to be passed. And the executive respects certain individuals to say, I recognize you to be the speaker, but man, I want the budget to pass. That way, when the budget, when the so-called speaker that the executive recognizes and brings the budget, the executive signs the budget and also signs the other man who claiming to be what. So Liberia is in a complete mess. How do we get from out of it? In the first place, Mr. Ayiti Williams, we need to incentivize our police. They have to be paid well. One thing, if you don't pay the men well, you invite lots of unquestionable immoral practices. The man has been exposed to corruption. Ayiti, you can't be paying somebody 200 US or probably 150 or 100. I don't know how much they pay the police. Just around 180 to 225 United States dollars. And the man has a family size of 4. 100-pound bag of red costs probably around $80 to $100. If that man purchases that rice, he only left with $100. The man rent alone is about $125 per month. You don't expect the man to be corrupt. The man is inherently corrupt. So we need to work at least on salary payment, livable wage. I mean, to what Mr. Duopu alluded to, livable wage. Pay the man. That way the man will not be exposed or at least tempted to accepting bribes or corruption. Secondly, let us start holding police people accountable. Let us hold them accountable. And in as much as I don't want us dwelling on the minuscule police action, instead I want us looking at some bureaucratic lapses, in the sense that when these police officers go and misbehave in the street, when they come back to base or when they come back to spaces or headquarters, whatever they call it, they don't reprimand them. They don't they do not reprimand them. So we need to start holding police officers accountable. We need to pay them well. And the last thing I want us to focus on, I think the police are improperly trained. They need to be properly trained. They need to be properly trained. Then, fast forward. If we assign certain police officer to certain localities, that person must have a relationship within that community. I used to live in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania before. And back in those days, can you imagine Philadelphia police? The man lives in different counties, like Lancaster County. Sometimes he would drive 1 hour, 2 hours to leave from his county to come and do policing in Philadelphia County. He doesn't understand our terrain. He sees every black man, for example, as a prime suspect. So if you recruit a police officer and assign a police officer to certain locality, let that man be from that locality. That way he understands the terrain. That way most of the people that live in that locality or inhabitants of that community, he's familiar with them. He may not likely manhandle them, only based on suspicion. Look at the scenario that you just talked about. The man was not belligerent. The man was not resisting arrest. The man had no weapons in his hand. But look at the way he was manhandled. Now, pretty tell me, if those very police officers were living in the same community that man was living in, and they know that man, or they know that Uncle John Brown's son, they would not treat him like the way they treated him. But apparently that police officer came from somewhere totally different. Again, Mr. Duopu, I want to thank you very much for saying, the whole thing is holistic. It's just one piece. It's just one piece of the puzzle. Community policing are just one piece of the puzzle. When you solve that one, you get a whole big hell of a puzzle on the other side. You have to find it and start plugging it in. Let's start with our lawmakers, the legislators. Those guys are inherently corrupt and they are lawless. Then you expect the policeman to be law-abiding when in fact you're not even paying him. I just pause. Mr. Duopu, you think you can ask more questions, please?
Okay, quickly, for the sake of time, we have 2 questions straight into our third segment. Nathaniel Y. Herron Institute International Academy. So my question now here is we know that the school there in Liberia is doing a remarkable job, in fostering education in the country. However, we see here that there's still some major financial struggle that's being encountered. Can you just tell us more about the challenges you have been facing in keeping the school operational, doors of the school open?
Oh, you talking to me?
Yes. No, I talked to Mr. Nathaniel Herron because I know for your we have a lot to talk about. We'll make sure we're gonna.
I think he got. Is he paused or he got?
Oh. No, I'm here. I'm sorry.
I have one question real quick.
Yes, sir. Go ahead.
Because we're running out of time. We're almost maybe an hour into the show.
Yeah, go ahead.
So let's just ask maybe 1 or 2 more questions, and then we can have the number out there. I think we should go ahead and do those ones particularly.
Sure.
Yeah. But anyway, tonight, the question that I have here for you is, could you just tell us more about the challenges you've been facing in keeping the school operational or the doors of the school open? Because I know that the school is being self-funded. You have to, fund the school from your own pocket. So what are the challenges that you were facing? Is it with, paying teachers, or is it some of the, I would say, maybe the facility itself, maybe all the resources like technology or books and things like that? What would you say?
I am The founder and proprietor of NYHIA, which is Nathaniel Herron International Academy. It's located around the Rousefield Highway for this time. It's like a 4-story building with 30 classrooms and 18 bathrooms. But the school is faced with lots of challenges, as the host of Mr. Ayiti Williams just alluded to. Is self-funded. It's a newly established school. School started September 16, 2024. We have not even gone up to a year yet. But we are faced with a lot of challenges. For example, teachers' pay. We all know the economy of our country, Liberia. We don't have job opportunities in the country. Most of the students, as a matter of fact, almost all of the students, pretty close to 96% of the students, parents cannot even afford just uniform for the students to go to school. So as a result, my family and I, since we decided to give back to the community, we self-fund the school. We have to pay teachers' salary arrear, and it is actually a daunting task for us to accomplish all of the time. Every month, we have to send money to pay a teacher because the students are not paying school fees. Most of them, the parents cannot afford and want to just keep the school opening. Apart from teacher salary payment arrears, we are faced with some logistical issues. For example, we do not have computers. So for those of you under my voice, and if you have means of getting computers from your alma mater or old school or formal school or your jobs and stuff like that, you can still serve humanity by donating it to NYHIA. So we truly appreciate that. The building itself is not yet completed, even though it's a 4-story building, but it is not yet completed. We still have other work to be done. For example, we have to put windows, we have to put doors in the various classrooms. Like I said, about 30 classrooms, and we have to put tiles and stuff like that on the floor. We do not have that yet. As you may be aware, if you're from Liberia is a tropical rainforest terrain. It's about to rain, or we're about to enter the rainy season in Liberia. We do not have bus, and the students, most of them walk from villages to the school. So it will be very, very much helpful if we can have at least a bus that will be able to pick up those kids from the various locations or from the various residents to bring them to school and probably take them from school back to their homes. So we are faced with these challenges, and my family and I, we're just doing it on our own, taking money from our pocket, and trust me, it's really, really killing me having a tour. So if you are listening to my voice this evening, if you can just come up with any kind of a remedy, for example, you can say, you know what, I will sponsor 2 or 3 kids. We truly appreciate that. We'll make it possible. The student will write you every time. We'll give you progress report. We'll give you the student a picture. The student, we'll just tell you everything about the student, and we'll make sure you and the student communicate. If you cannot sponsor 1, 2, 3 children from the school fee is just around $250 to $250 for the entire year, including uniform. So we appreciate that. Now, when you want to make donation in order to help with teachers' pay, because most of the teachers are complaining, some of them even threatening quitting. They're like, no, we can't continue to provide these pro bono services when in fact our pay is just not amountable to livable wage, and it's really having a toll on us. So if you can come in and chip anything, we truly, truly appreciate. These are some of the challenges that NYHIA is faced with, and we don't intend closing NYHIA down. We give back to the community. Like the question Mr. Ayiti Williams asked, he said, what can we do to help improve the lives of our people in Liberia, especially when it comes to complacency crisis? I said it starts with us, and the us meaning some of us that are here. We have to give back to our community, but we need help. So if you can come and help, we truly appreciate that.
Thank you very much, Mr. Herron, as well as Mr. Duopu, for coming tonight to share your insight. I believe tonight was a great night, and without any further ado, we will try to wrap up here. As we get up close, I would like So asking for your individual passion statement. The number, what we were doing as a Herron, we were trying to host a show, like a whole show for NYHIA, because I know we had a show before.
Yes,
we can go back. This is going to be like progress as a follower, and then at the conclusion of the show, then we can put the number out there and ask people to kind of donate or give some kind of support. But again, this is the We2r Liberians Movement. This is how we going to try to conclude. Mr. Nathaniel, you can give us your closing remarks, and then illustrious other brother will do his, and then we will conclude our joint curtain tonight.
My closing remark is very, very simple. Liberia needs all of us. Everybody has a role to play in Liberia. We cannot point fingers and continue to point fingers and excusing ourselves from shouldering some of the responsibility to say, oh, I expect this person to do it. I expect the government to do it. With the little that you can do, that will help to push Liberia a little distance farther than where it was originally. And to the government of Liberia, I hate to talk politics, but I'm extremely disappointed because I have not seen any national agenda, and I have not seen any national agenda that is achievable or attainable within our time that the government can point out to say, you know what, we hope to have accomplished this within this period of time. I've not seen it. Some of us giving back to our community, like the school that we have in Liberia. The government is not subsidizing. The government is not providing anything. They come up with a national budget. For example, Ministry of Education, they come up with a national budget. We are also helping the Liberian government to reduce the uneducated population within our country. The government is supposed to subsidize. To say, you know what? For example, I'm from District 1, Makibi County. That's where the school is located for this time. My representative, his name is Opi Cooper. What Opi Cooper needs to do is to go in District 1 and find all of those schools. And when the Ministry of Education comes over the budget, if those schools meet the government requirement, let the government be able to provide subsidies. But nothing of such happening, as far as I'm concerned, from my perspective, from my end. And I'm giving back, but I need help. And we can all help to make Liberia the Liberia that we want it to be. We should not leave it with one person. Thank you very much, Mr. Williams.
We will now ask Mr. Duopu to give us a closing statement.
Yeah, I want to thank Mr. Herron for what he's doing, his family, I think we got something in common, maybe a lot of things. We both have our schools in Magiri. I'm sure the representative you referenced is also the representative for the area where my school is in Duazon.
Oh, okay. So
the road leading to the Duazon town. I mean, my school is just kind of adjacent to the Duazon public school.
Okay.
And the issues you just
raised,
we just listed, I also share those same issues with my school. Our school, my school is actually named after my mother, the Beatrice Isabel Duopu International School of Excellence.
That's good.
Yeah, my wife and I have been working on this thing for quite some time, and we just opened the school. It's been like a year now.
Okay.
It's from nursery to 4th grade, for now.
Okay.
We hope to build on that cohort of students, to matriculate from one class to another until we can see them graduate, in the next couple of years.
Yeah.
So we are faced with the same problem. In our school, we have a feeding program where we feed our kids and they teach us twice a day. We give breakfast and lunch. The teachers themselves, they eat there, every day. And like you said, man, because of the high cost of living, most of the kids did not even pay their school fees for maybe a year.
Mm-hmm.
But this is something that we've done as a legacy program, as a legacy for my mother, who did everything for me to made me the man I am today. So, in paying the teachers, we've been doing it from our pockets. My wife and I, we got to struggle every month to meet payroll.
It's tough.
We don't want our teachers to go without pay because I believe in, like we talk about the dignity of labor. I believe teaching is a vocation. It's the best job anybody can aspire for, to be a teacher, to give back to the next generation. So I see it as a very worthy cause. Anybody who is engaged in such entrepreneurship, you get my approbation. I got so much respect for people who give back. Mm-hmm. If we could just do this, as from an individual, group, collective approach, the whole notion of complacency we discuss about, we might not suffer so much complacency because there are other people who are even financially potent, who are complacent, in giving back.
That's true.
So that should show the decadence, of such a human experience. People who have the wherewithal, the means, they are complacent in giving back. It's a societal malaise. All they're interested in, and it's just the, it's almost like your value, whatever you cherish becomes your value.
Yeah.
If you cherish money, especially when you're getting it illegally, it becomes of value for you.
Yeah.
It becomes a stamp. Mm-hmm. For us who believe in a human development, who believe in giving back, who believe the next generation should be better than ours, we'll make the sacrifice, no matter what it takes.
Yep.
Even if it means that we will suffer for that. Let us suffer, because most people don't want to suffer. That's why our society is like that. Because they want to take the easy road. They won't be comfortable. They don't want to leave their comfort zone. And if we don't leave the comfort zone, you don't grow as a person. And as a country, we won't grow. Our comfort zone has always been complacent. They will do it for us. And now the chicken have come home to roast. That even on a global scale, international relations, something that I studied for a couple of years, have practiced, have changed. It has there's a paradigm shift in global affairs. Maybe we can discuss it on a larger scale, maybe in the next show. But most countries now are looking within. They're looking inward. Mm-hmm. And you think they're selfish. No, they've been self-aware.
Well, I'm not cutting you off, but look at what president he says, America first.
Yeah, and that's a new paradigm.
America first.
Brother Herron, this is a new paradigm shift. Maybe Trump is just echoing it. Other people not echoing it like how he is, but other people doing it. Other countries are doing it because of the rise of ultra nationalism now in Europe and other places. People are looking within, yes, because their societies are demanding.
Look at Viktor Orban. Viktor Orban.
Their societies are demanding of their political establishment to take care of them first. Because they have that political socialization that I talked about that can ring in their national leaders. We don't like that. So when people corrupting our country, we clap for them. Hey, oh man. My man, you see I represent the car? The OP man you're talking about. The land my school is on right now. I bought the land from somebody who he said was his uncle. After I went to Liberia 2008 to work with the Governance Commission, I was in Bannersville. My little nephew came running. That there were people on the land who, people wanted to take the land and all that stuff. So, I had some connection with the police. I went to the police, got some law enforcement guy who came on the land. The man was telling me that I bought the land from his uncle cheap. and he went to pay my money back.
But a deal is a deal.
So he can sell the land to some Nigerian bishop or pastor who wanted to buy the land. It's a 6 acre, 6 lots. Excuse me, 6 lots. So I said, if you won't buy this land, it got to be at my price. Yeah. You're not going to put a price on it because I already bought it. I got a deed for it. So you go back to your uncle and tell your uncle, well, too bad. So I will sell it to you at my price, and I'm not selling it to you. I don't want to sell my land.
Let me ask you, was he a representative at the time when you and he were talking, or not really?
Well, I didn't know his social political stuff. I didn't know he was one of those guys from the community who were selling land and selling rock crusher and selling sand on the beach. So I didn't really, but I knew that he was popular in the area, because his name was ringing and all that stuff. So, but I dealt with him at that level. And what I did was I just fenced the entire land, which cost me almost like $20,000-$30,000.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I mean, you're talking about fencing, talking about making sure the foundation is solid because there's some of the areas kind of compromised with swamp and all that stuff. So it took real capital investment, So it goes back to that whole notion of that inner fortitude to do something. I would have been complacent. I would have sat back. Like I would have sold my land. It would have been court or, some kind of judicial settlement that would never come. I would have lost on that thing. So, but, I mean, coming back to my closing statement, I must commend you for the school, and I hope we can collaborate. Yeah. Because we can do everything alone. We can be in our own silos and achieve international growth. It has to be collaboration, sharing ideas. I was just in Liberia 2.5 weeks ago. I took some computers. My wife, she's very passionate about this school. We were doing this thing together. We bought a couple of computers. We took it to a fellow that lives around who's a computer nerd. He put a lot of, software in it. I talk about 4 components. I got a guy in Liberia who does my IT thing, building a solar panel, just making sure the school is at a level.
It's equipped.
Taking even the chairs the kids sit on in Liberia, I got all the chairs from here.
Oh, wow.
I got all the decks, the rear, the decks that are in semicircular decks that the teacher will be close to the kids. Everything, my wife and I will go on Facebook Marketplace. We'll go to like far-flung areas. I get a little van. We'll drive sometimes an hour, 2 hours drive. If she sees something on Facebook that she wants, all our classroom, we got whiteboards. We're making sure the school, even if it's not as schools in America, but, the children should know that they can have these things. In our case, they will start learning computer from kindergarten.
Yeah.
I want to make sure they know how to sit on a computer and even do, just something, playful and stuff. They don't have that freedom.
Even Coco Melon, right?
Yeah. Our school is based on the foundational principle that every child can excel.
Yes. That's
the foundational principle of our school. And that we put so much in the school. We have a chat room. The teachers will interact with them. We got days for the parents to come on campus to interact with their kids, to watch movies. We got a movie thing there. On Sundays, they come there, they bring the kids. In fact, the whole concept is to have an evening program for the market women in that Duopu market to come in the evening, adult literacy, and, to be able to write their own names, to be able to do financial, literacy thing, to how to save money, how to budget, all these things, on a micro level can propel itself on a grander scale. Because we're going to be talking anything in a utopian way, and abstract way, and we're getting no practical demonstration, of what it should be, So the kind of development mantra we all should have as citizens of Liberia.
Definitely.
That mantra that you can do something in your own corner, You can collaborate with other people who of like minds. You can do something in that neighborhood. You won't do everything for everybody, but your little thing you can do, your one little thing. So now we're sitting in this great country. We got all these opportunities. I came in that country with $20 in my pocket. $20 in New York City. $20. But I can look back on my achievement. You know, I went to graduate school. My wife went to graduate school. My kids went to college. You know, I got a good job. My wife got a good job. You know, we can be appreciated what we've achieved because we came in this country. I did all manner of all jobs. If we're talking about washing dishes in a nursing home, you're talking about doing security, because it gives you character. You know, it builds your character. It gives you that spirit of long suffering. In the Bible talks about long suffering. It doesn't mean that you should suffer forever. No, long suffering is a virtue.
Endurance,
yeah, that inner fortitude to wait on your time, to be steadfast. These are things that we try to teach in our school. We're not teaching our math and science. They're important, but character is one of the subjects we teach. Character.
Yeah.
Character, what makes you a man, what makes you a woman, little kids, teaching them character. You know? So our discussion about, you know, complacency, like I will just recap, it goes back to our history as a nation state. Yeah. And that history has not been confronted, even though today. We are afraid to confront our history because we are complacent.
Yes.
As a country. Because if you can't confront what hurts you, you're complacent. If you can confront what, you know, is disease, I mean, if you get an infection, and you don't confront that infection, you're complacent to that infection. And that infection could cause your death.
Yes.
Even a toothache can cause your death because you're complacent. You're not brushing your teeth. You're not, you know, flossing. You're not seeing a dentist. When that tooth decays, it goes into your bloodstream, and you get sepsis, and you die from. The man died from toothache. I mean, it's complacency. Yeah. So to confront that, you got to be engaged with your holistic self, and it goes even to our national self. What are some of the things that bedevil our national development, our governance architecture? We have not built a foundation, you know, to hold people accountable, to make sure people who violate laws bear the consequences. Like I was just on one guy's Facebook page, you were talking about some girl who Miss Liberia, who because she did something and somebody was trolling her, she went and assaulted that person, and then there's discussion on Facebook how to deal with it. Oh, sorry, you know, like again, I miss Liberia, so let's move on, you know. And you know, those simple things in society, people are not held accountable because your social status, you miss Liberia, so you can assault somebody because the person, you know, you're engaged in something. You got no right to put your hands on anybody.
I agree with you, Mr. Duopu, but let me just chip in small. I know I understand you want to come in to get a closure to this, but let me just chip in small. And like the way you rightfully said, people are to be held accountable for their actions. I'm totally in agreement with you. Not because you have some nobility or some noble status such as Miss Liberia or Queen or whatever they bestow upon her does not give you the right to go and physically assault somebody. Now, the girl that was assaulted, her mother went and sued this queen because the queen went and apologized publicly.
Hold on,
Mr. Duopu. Maybe the apology could not be enough, or it may not be enough, and that's fine. Like the way you rightfully said, we need to hold people accountable for their action. So she went openly on social media. She apologized. She was very much contrite, and I understand where she's coming from. But this girl mom, the victim mom, went and decided to sue, and rightfully so. But you won't believe the outrageous amount this mother sued for, brother. $10 million. Yes.
But 10 million what?
$10 million United States dollars for the assault. Now,
but the thing is, you know, the thing is it's a silver suit. And in a silver suit, you can put any amount you're suing for, but it will take a jury to say if that amount makes sense, But
I
she
agree.
sued her severally because she wanted to send a message.
No, I understand.
Because the criminal case could be compromised. It could be compromised. Like Miss Liberia, somebody could pull strings and all that stuff. But she's suing her severally because she caused her daughter irreparable harm and pain and suffering. So it will be a jury that will look at the case and say, hey, is this amount reasonable?
Yeah.
Is this, and it will be a jury trial. So, let's see how it plays out. But I think you're trying to send a message, that nobody has the right to engage in such physical violence against another person. But just to close. Just to close, I would like to thank Ayiti for the invitation you extended. And I will always avail myself, to this platform because it's something that I believe in because I know Ayiti's passion, and I myself, I'm very passionate about some of the things that he's passionate about. And we've been talking about it, prior to me coming on the show. So we hope to keep engaged, on the show and bring other, viewpoints, enlarge the platform, create other avenues for other people to come to share their perspectives on, issues that are confronting our country. And other things that we can discuss about too, not just political thing, but social thing. A lot of, the human capacity is so rounded that you can't just focus on one thing. You gotta be well rounded. You can discuss the economy. You can discuss, what's going on in terms of trade, new world trade policy now, and international affairs issues, and just global issues and how it affects Liberia because we live in a global community. So I'm happy to be here and look forward to more engagements. Once you can schedule me and I can find the time. I know we're all busy.
Yeah.
But we can make it this intellectual, platform that people can even make it a university, an online, intellectual discourse, where we can even give honorary degrees.
The School of Excellence. the School of Excellence.
Yeah.
Because we got to explain the discourse.
Yes.
And the discourse is very important. And then human development, the discourse. That's why the Greeks were good at the discourse. The discourse, I hate to be talkative, but the discourse brings about polemical viewpoints. There's no viewpoint that is sacrosanct.
Yeah.
Every viewpoint needs to be contested, or else that is not a viewpoint. That is just a military edict. Every policy that our government comes our way, it needs to be contested. That's why they get the courts. But you see, when somebody writing an executive order people can be suing because you got to make sure the negative externality of those actions don't affect, that party. So that's what the discourse is about. And there was a good discourse that we could share ideas, we can, even be polemical. And the polemics is important in such a way that you say, but then why? Why this? Asking that question. And that probing notion, how you probe things. Our national leaders don't do that. They don't probe. Their actions are just based on, like what they call the gun at the whip, Yeah. You gotta be probing. Why this? Why? Why can we do this? How can we do this better? And how our society will grow. So, but I thank you. I thank Mr. Herron, for meeting up with him for the first time. I hope we'll have more engagements and we might exchange numbers maybe through IE and and we can collaborate on our school projects back home. I can learn from you, you learn from me, and see how we can make that community, vibrant community, because there where we are, I'm from Nimba, but Magibi is close to my heart. I even have a farm there. My wife and I would just procure some acre of land to build our farmhouse and where we intend to live, in fact, So
you plan on going back to live in Liberia? I'm sorry.
Oh yeah, definitely. I was just in Liberia. I was in Liberia prior to COVID. Working in Liberia prior to COVID. When I came, because of COVID, my wife, she, told me not to go back. So I listened to her because, be married to somebody 30 years, tell you something, you gotta do it, my man.
Damn, 30 years, congratulations.
Or else you sleep on the couch.
But me, my man,
So,
at a different level. I want to talk to
you. I thank you guys for the time, and I hope your listeners and viewers, enjoy the program. And I just want to encourage you to, be steadfast, not to be complacent. And there are a lot of people who would think you can't do this. I'm sure you've heard it before, and people think, this thing is a waste of time, but there's always good thing in small beginnings, and it will grow, and it will become one of the most because it's about truth. Other people will always delve into lies and falsehood, but once you speak the truth, I don't care how long it takes, it will always rise to the top. So thank you and have a good night, guys.
All right. So Dr. Herron, Mr. Herron, I'm not going to say Dr. Herron because you don't want that name.
My man, we do get a man 100 degree, my man. What are you doing?
Yeah. So we'll just conclude tonight. This is how we're going to conclude. I want to thank all of you, for our viewers, for tuning in, and we'll call it a night. This is the We2r Liberians Movement. You have a good, pleasant night, and talk to you guys sometime soon. Have a good night.
Yeah.
It's all we want to live. Give me food, give me clothes, give me love, and give me shelter.